The program we have brought to you all today is, as I said, the Interfaith Speakers Bureau. Initiated in 2007, the Interfaith Speakers Bureau, or IFSB, is both a natural outgrowth of the interfaith friendships and connections that ING built in the course of its work, and a recognition that the acceptance of Islam and Muslims is intimately related to the degree to which our society accepts and welcomes cultural and religious diversity and pluralism in general. The IFSB aims to build bridges among religious communities and enhance religious literacy and mutual respect by providing panels of speakers representing major world religions. Today, we have a panel of Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, and Hindu practitioners who will speak about their faith and on the values they hold. This afternoon, I will begin by asking panelists a few questions, and then we will transition to taking questions from you all. I encourage you to write down your questions as they come up, so you'll be able to ask them during the Q&A section. Before we jump into the questions, I will briefly introduce our speakers. So first off, we have Amina Jandali, who is a founding member of ING. She co-designs and develops ING's educational presentations and cultural competency seminars. Amina has delivered hundreds of presentations in schools, colleges, universities, churches, and other venues on Islam and related subjects. Amina represents Islam. Rabbi Melanie was ordained at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in 1981 and has been serving Congregation Shir Hadash of Los Gatos since July 1990. Rabbi Melanie represents Judaism. Venerable Tenzin Choki is an ordained Buddhist nun and has been studying and practicing Buddhism for over 40 years. She completed a 6-year solitary meditation retreat in 2006, and since then has been teaching at Buddhist centers in North and South America, Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. Venerable Tenzin represents Buddhism. Katie Dickinson is an Episcopalian and serves as the diocesan coordinator for the Education of Ministry Theology education program in the Episcopal Diocese of El Camino Real. Katie represents Christianity. Lakshmi Subramanian writes and teaches on the Bhakti traditions of the great Indian poet saints and has several album credits as a professional vocalist. She creates contemporary devotional music with her husband for interfaith audiences across North America. Lakshmi represents Hinduism. Awesome. So now that we have met all of our wonderful panelists this morning, I will get us started with our first question to panelists, which will be, what are the main teachings of your faith? And we will start with Amina. And you are on.
Unmute myself.
There you go.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to begin by greeting you with the Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be upon all of you. It's unfortunate we can't meet in person, but we are grateful to have the opportunity to meet online. So Islam, it considers itself one of the 3 Abrahamic faiths, along with Judaism and Christianity. And as such, the central teachings revolve around the belief in a divine being or God, in Arabic known as Allah. And the belief is that God created all of humanity with all of our diversity, with all of our differences, basically to know him and to worship him and to come close to him. And in fact, the term Islam literally means knowing and loving and finding peace through submission to God. So for a Muslim, their life is devoted to God. And the goal and outcome of this life is to live a life of righteousness, where they are trying to improve themselves as well as improve society. There is a term in Arabic called ihsan, which means excellence in all of one's actions, including excellence with one's relationship to God, based on a prophetic saying that ihsan is to live one's life in worship and kind of acknowledgement of God as if one can see God, because even though we cannot see God, God can see us. And that same excellence should then also be applied to other people, because we are all servants of God, and all religions, including Islam, emphasize the importance of how one treats other people. Some version of the golden rule is found in every faith, including in Islam. There is a prophetic saying that none of you truly believes until you want for others what you want for yourself. So many of the teachings in Islam revolve around these two basic foundations: interaction with God, interaction with other people. And so Muslims are called upon to worship God, and we'll talk about that a little later, but also in their interactions to be compassionate, to be merciful, to be kind, to be honest, to avoid any of the major sins such as lying or cheating or even backbiting, and to basically live an upright life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Amina. Next, we will hear from Lakshmi, please.
Is that, I'm sorry, I missed your last word. Was that for me to continue?
Lakshmi?
Lakshmi.
Yes,
Great.
sure. Yeah. Hinduism is also known as Sanatana Dharma, which is the eternal way. And it's one of the world's oldest religious traditions and is thought of as a way of life by many practitioners. With over 1 billion Hindus worldwide, in India, the United States, and in other parts of the world, Hindus practice their religion in strikingly different ways. Their thought and practices have been shaped by local and regional cultures and, of course, their personal preferences as well. So this phenomenon has led to a lot of internal diversity within the tradition. And so one practicing Hindu may be very different from another practicing Hindu. So I'll outline a couple of teachings to give you a flavor of this complex religious system. So there's the belief in one supreme consciousness or absolute truth. This is termed as Brahman. And this consciousness does not have any form, no physical traits, no characteristics, but this truth can be worshipped and is worshipped in many different forms, which is why the common misconception that Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. Despite believing in one supreme God, the tradition allows for different representations of the divine because the focus is on cultivating love for God. And if that means you want to imagine God as a baby or God as your best friend, that's just fine. Another teaching is that every living being is a reflection of the divine, and as such, we are all individual souls with inherent divinity, and we are all on the path to evolution. And Hindus subsequently believe in the laws of karma, which is every thought, word, or action has karmic reactions, dharma, which are basic guidelines for living, reincarnation, the cycle of birth and death, and think of moksha or liberation from the cycle of birth and death as the ultimate spiritual goal in life. Looking forward to discussing more as we go on in the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. Next, we will hear from Venerable Tenzin, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us. So Buddhism was founded around 2,500 years ago in India, in northern India, the Ganges River Valley. And the founder, the Buddha, sometimes there's a misunderstanding. People think the Buddha is the Buddhist idea of God, but he was a human being who sort of developed through his own practice a certain spiritual path, shares in common many of the ideas that Lakshmi just mentioned, coming from that, ancient Indian worldview. There's the idea of rebirth or reincarnation. There's an idea of karma, so shares a lot of qualities, but kind of a unique presentation. One of the things, the kind of main teachings of the Buddhist path is what we call the Four Noble Truths: the truth of suffering or unwanted experience, dissatisfying experiences, the truth of the origin of suffering. So the Buddha talked in a lot of detail about where our unwanted experiences come from. And then the truth of the cessation of all unwanted experiences through the path. That's the fourth truth, the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And that, of course, is a long story. That's the whole Buddhist path. But it's, really focuses on changing our outlook on things, changing our disturbing emotions, which will then have an impact on our karma. So it's very much an internal path. In Buddhism, and I'll talk more about this as we go along, we don't have an idea of God, of a supreme being, of an omnipotent being. Buddhism is nearly unique in that there's only one other main world religion that doesn't have an idea of some kind of God or supreme being or higher power. So it's basically a path that's very internal. Some people even call Buddhism more of a philosophy or psychology because there's no creation story and no idea of a creator being. So it's kind of interesting, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable Tenzin. Katie, if we can hear from you next, please.
I'm Katie Dickinson, and I'm here to speak about Christianity. There's about 2.4 billion Christians worldwide, and hold on a second. Sorry. Christianity is one of the three Abrahamic religions, along with Judaism and Islam, and it is founded on the teachings of Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry, Katie, can I just interrupt you really quickly? Your volume, I don't know if for everyone else, your volume is really low and really quickly. Can you say it again? No, I'm having a hard time.
I don't know what to do to boost the gain. I haven't had that problem before. Hold on, let me turn off the air conditioner.
Okay, okay. Thank you, everyone. Technical, fun Zoom issues.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
The air conditioner was making noise. Okay, so starting over, Christianity has 2.4 billion followers worldwide. It was started over 2,000 years ago based on the teachings of Jesus, called the Christ, or the Anointed One, who was a Jew who lived in Palestine, who started very small with a very small number of followers, and his teachings are recorded in a book called the Bible. There are three pieces of Christianity. The Roman Catholics, who are sort of the biggest group, Protestants, and Orthodox. And the three groups share two basic beliefs in general. One is called the Trinity, that God has three aspects, that there's one God with three aspects, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and that Jesus was both wholly human and wholly divine. And Jesus had two laws. There are over 700 laws if you count them all up in the Bible, but he said there are only two that count. One is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. And then he said, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. And so when he was speaking, there weren't books, there were scrolls. People didn't read what we would call a codex, which is something bound here. They read something that was a big scroll. And so the image is that you would hold up the middle of the scroll and it would drape from the center, and that the center is the law. And so those are the two laws. And then that's in the Gospel of Matthew. And then also in the Gospel of Matthew is what do righteous people do? And he said that if you're going to be welcomed and inherit the kingdom and welcomed into heaven, you need to feed the hungry. You need to give drink to the thirsty. You need to welcome the stranger. You need to clothe the naked, and you need to visit the prisoner. And when he told his followers this, or when he gave that teaching, people said, well, when did that happen? When did we ever treat you like that? Because he put it in his own terms, that you did this to me. And people said, we never saw you hungry or naked or thirsty or in prison. And he said, truly, I tell you, just as you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. So the focus of Christianity in terms of what is righteous behavior is taking care of the marginalized, those who are hungry and thirsty, and those who are in prison, and those who are naked. And I look forward to your questions. This is going to be a very, very interesting conversation.
Thank you so much, Katie, for that. And we'll conclude this question with Rabbi Melanie. What are the main teachings of your faith?
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be able to talk about Judaism. Judaism is a little bit different in that it is both a religious faith and a personal identity, a peoplehood. So some people identify as Jews because of their religious beliefs and their practices. They might observe mitzvot, that is, the commandments of the Torah as understood by the later rabbis. They would embrace core beliefs about ethical monotheism, the belief in one God who cares about how we act and how we treat others. They may pray daily on their own or with a prayer group and study traditional Jewish texts. They might observe the weekly Jewish Sabbath, Friday evening and Saturday, and the 9 main Jewish holidays. But there are others who identify as Jews because of their family background or their traditions. They might not identify themselves as religious, but they might still embrace core Jewish ideas like tikkun olam, our responsibility to repair the world. Their observance of Jewish holidays would stress cultural aspects rather than religious traditions. In summary, the focus of Judaism through the centuries has been on practice and on our behavior in the world. So there is no conformity required in terms of what an individual believes. And in fact, discussion and even dispute are very much a part of Jewish culture. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rabbi Melanie. Okay, this brings us to our next question for panelists. How do your teachings affect your day-to-day life? This can include rituals, practices, holidays, diet, any kind of thing that your religion or faith will affect your day-to-day life. And we will start with Venerable Tenzin, please.
Thank you. So there's quite a wide range of practices and so forth for Buddhists. So I'll just kind of give a sampling. Kind of like Lakshmi said, there's so many different ways to practice, and depending on different cultures and so forth. Many Buddhists will have a daily meditation practice. Often in the morning, we'll begin with some sort of sitting practice. It often involves setting our intention for the day. That's a big part of our daily practice, because we say in Buddhism, the mind is so important for deciding whether something is virtuous or non-virtuous. And so we really try and set a strong intention in the day. May my actions not harm others, but only benefit others. Sometimes we'll do quiet meditation practice. Sometimes there'll be certain chanting or practices or recitations, depending on the lineages of Buddhism that people practice. So there's, kind of, especially in the morning, often also offerings. Sometimes families will have a shrine room with an altar, and they'll make certain offerings before they do their practice. So it's really about kind of going into the day with sort of a mid-course correction, settling our intention a little bit and reminding ourselves of what's important. And then throughout the day, we try to be very, very mindful of not only that intention, but also our actions, our speech, so as not to be in any way harmful, and be very, very conscious of our intentions. There are many different levels of Buddhist vows that one can take, both as a layperson and as a monastic. And the essence of the vows is really about not harming. So there's, we try and really keep this mindfulness throughout the day. And then there's, in non-COVID times, we do meet for group practices. In most Buddhist cultures, we follow a lunar calendar. So there's a certain kind of calendar of group practice a couple of times a month. We haven't been able to do that except on Zoom. We also have a couple of major Buddhist holidays that mark different significant events in the Buddhist life. And so those are kind of celebrated in different ways. So it's a combination of both individual practices and, you know, when the timing is right, collective practices and community practices as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable Tenzin. Next, we will hear from Katie, please.
So I have practices as a Christian, which include grace or prayer before meals. I go to services on Sunday. There's a lot of different things I do, but I thought it would be fun to start off with one of the most famous Episcopalians, Robin Williams, the comedian Robin Williams, who gave the 10 reasons to be an Episcopalian. And this kind of outlines not only do what we do in our particular denomination, but the breadth of practices of Christians. So he, starting with number 10, he said, no snake handling. Then 9, you can believe in dinosaurs. 8, male and female, God created them. Male and female, we ordain them. 7, you don't have to check your brains at the door. 6, pew aerobics. 5, the church year is color-coded. 4, free wine on Sundays. 3, all of the pageantry, none of the guilt. 2, you don't have to know how to swim to get baptized. And number 1, no matter what you believe, there's bound to be at least another Episcopalian who agrees with you. So it's a funny way of looking at Christianity, because there are Christians who do handle snakes. It says in Mark 16 that you should, and some people do. There are Christians who believe in dinosaurs and who don't. There are Christians who believe that women should be ordained, and there are Christians who believe that that's the wrong thing to do completely. There are Christians who don't drink wine or dance, and there are Christians who do. In fact, one of the things they say about Episcopalians is where there are 4 Episcopalians, you'll find a 5th, meaning, you know, alcohol. We have a lot of pageantry in our church. There are churches that don't believe in pageantry and don't do that at all. In fact, there are churches that don't believe in celebrating Christmas or Easter or anything else. They believe that celebrations are completely inappropriate. So the one thing about Christianity is that, I'm not saying anything goes, but there is a vast variety of practice. And that when I say that we all believe in the Trinity and the Incarnation, there isn't a huge amount that all Christians do or believe, except for that. I'm a grad student at the Graduate Theological Union. I'm writing my thesis right now, and I'm interviewing people, and it's amazing how much variety there is. So almost any practice is a practice you will find amongst Christians.
Thank you so much for that, Katie. That was very powerful. Just, you know, hearing about the diversity within a religion is very easy for people to think, oh, all this group are the same. Thank you so much for sharing that. Next, we will have Rabbi Melanie, please.
I want to talk for a minute about some of the things that make it a little bit challenging to be Jewish in America. And one of those things is living with 2 different calendars. There's the secular calendar that has the weekend and has American national holidays. And then we have our own Jewish calendar. 2 key things about the Jewish calendar that make it challenging is, first of all, the weekly Sabbath begins traditionally with the family home together for dinner on Friday night, and then continues with people withdrawing from their regular work until you see 3 stars on Saturday night. All Jewish holidays begin in the evening and go through the next day. Now, every family will observe the Sabbath somewhat differently, but when there are work-related social engagements on Friday nights, that's deeply problematic, as are meetings and activities on Saturday, especially if they're on Saturday morning during our regular worship time. The second thing about the Jewish calendar that makes it difficult sometimes for other people to understand is that because it's a lunar calendar, Jewish holidays are not always at exactly the same time every year. So this year, the Jewish New Year is on September 18th. But a couple of years ago, it was over Labor Day weekend, and it can go as late as October. Similarly, Hanukkah, which was over Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, but can come as late as New Year's weekend. Hanukkah is a festival of light, and so the Jewish calendar is arranged such that it's on the darkest time of the darkest month, the 25th of the month of Kislev. For Jews, being able to celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the most solemn day on the calendar, a day of fasting and prayer, is very important. And sometimes at work or in school, there are conflicts with this. Also in the spring, our festival of Passover, the holiday of freedom as a people, which we first full moon in the spring with a very important family gathering, a service and meal called a Seder. And when there are conflicts with that, that can be very difficult for Jewish people. Finally, Jews differ greatly in the stringency with which they observe all of the Jewish food restrictions, what's called kashrut. But many Jews will avoid pork, and you never can go wrong if you serve a Jewish person a vegetarian meal. So that makes life much easier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Melanie. Amina, can we please hear from you next?
Yes, thank you. So in terms of daily practices, Islam is a ritual-based religion, and the most important ritual is the 5 daily prayers, which basically occur throughout the day. These prayers follow the movement of the sun, and so depending on what time of year we're talking about, the prayer times and the amount of time, the window of time is going to vary. So in the summer, where we are right now, you have a window of time that is quite long. So for instance, the noon prayer will go from about 1 until about 5. As we enter into the winter months, this gets a lot shorter. So maybe it goes between 1 and 3. And so this is something that obviously impacts students at school, but also employees and just anybody out and about doing their work. A Muslim can really do their prayers, perform their prayers anywhere. A place of worship for Muslims is called a mosque, and there are some dozen mosques in San Jose, but obviously getting to the mosque at the time of prayer, and of course now the mosques are closed, so that's not even possible. So people can just pray wherever they might be, which could be, you know, in a park, at the grocery store, in the parking lot, maybe in the grocery store, in a dressing room at a store. So that is really what frames a Muslim's daily life if they are observant, and of course not all Muslims perform the 5 daily prayers. Some of the other acts of worship or the daily kind of activities that might impact a Muslim is, as Rabbi Melanie mentioned, the diet, which like Jews, Muslims also do not eat pork if they are observant. And then an additional layer is for Muslims who observe what is called halal or zabiha, which would mean meat that is prepared in a certain way, very similar to kosher, where they are ritually prepared and usually sold in a shop that caters to Muslims, although you can find dhabiha or halal now in Safeway and Costco. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of halal restaurants across the Bay Area, and they will usually have a little symbol at the window. But in the event that that's not available, again, like Rabbi Melanie said, a vegetarian meal is great. Fish is always okay. And so that's one aspect of the diet. The other aspect is no alcohol. And so that would include not only, you know, not imbibing the drink alcohol, but some substances may contain a small amount of alcohol, which people are not usually aware of. Those are the 2 main restrictions in terms of diet. And then holidays also, similar to Judaism, we also do follow a lunar calendar. However, it is a purely lunar calendar where the days or the dates of the holidays will actually fall 11 days earlier every year. And it takes 33 years for a particular holiday or a particular date to go all around the calendar. So Ramadan, for instance, this last year was in May primarily. As we go into the next year, it's going to begin at the end of April and go into May. And it's going going to continue advancing until it goes all the way around the entire year, meaning that in Ramadan, when Muslims fast, which is abstain from food and drink during the sunlit hours, that is going to have a very different, again, kind of experience depending on what time of year it is. So in the summer, as we have just kind of completed for the last 10 years, a longer fast, the days are hotter, school is out. However, as we move now into the school year, the days are going to grow increasingly shorter. And the fast is an observance that really centers the Muslim on their worship, on their devotion to God. It is a very communal time as well. A lot of people will be going to the mosque. And of course, that was something that was missing this year as all the mosques were closed. And so people were really observing Ramadan with their families at home. Most of the time, it's a very social event where people are inviting each other. So those are a few of the rituals and the daily aspects of Islam that Muslims observe in their daily life.
Thank you so much, Amina. Lastly, for this question, we will hear from Lakshmi. Again, the question, just to remind our audience, is how do your teachings affect your day-to-day life? Take it away, Lakshmi.
Sure. There are several Hindu religious holidays that take place throughout the year, like Diwali, which we might know as the Festival of Lights, or Navaratri, the goddess festival of 9 nights, or Ganesh Chaturthi, which is coming up this Saturday, actually. As per the tradition, there are certain observances that are followed as part of the religious holiday, like special prayers, visiting the temple, fasting, or feasting with your entire family. And in fact, there are daily prayers that Hindus are encouraged to say throughout the day. For example, there's a prayer for when we first wake up. We again think of the Lord, set our intention, and ask for grace to flow throughout the day. There is another prayer for when we shower. There's one that asks for a purification of the body and mind as we shower. And there's also one to be chanted before meals. Personally, one of my favorites is the one that's chanted before we go to bed. And it goes like this. Kayena vacha manasendriyerva buddhyatmana va prakriti swabhavat karomi yad yad sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayami. This is a Sanskrit mantra, and the translation goes like this. Whatever I do with my body, speech, mind, or sensory organs, either with my personal knowledge or natural tendencies, I surrender and submit all that to the Supreme Divine Lord Narayana. This is a beautiful prayer that seeks the grace of God. Another aspect that affects our daily living and is very much a part of the Hindu way of life for some Hindus is vegetarianism. Again, as our friends have shared, if you give a Hindu a vegetarian meal, we have nothing to complain about. And so not that all Hindus are vegetarian. Hindus don't eat beef, but there are many Hindus who are vegetarian or vegan, primarily because of the concept of ahimsa or nonviolence. And this was the ideal that Mahatma Gandhi was actually known for. And many Hindus seek to connect Hindu philosophy with their daily practices, that all living beings are indeed divine. And so causing any harm or pain to any living being that extends to the animal kingdom would be acting in accordance to dharma. So which is why Hindus don't eat beef, because the cow is considered a symbol of prosperity, and cows are often compared to a mother who's the ultimate giver. And why the cow is regarded as sacred is also because Hindu priests use many dairy products as part of their worship rituals. And so the cow is considered extremely sacred and something that should not be harmed or abused or consumed by Hindus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, and thank you to all our panelists for your answers up until now. We will begin our last question before we turn it over to Q&A. I hope everyone is preparing your questions. I know the panelists really enjoy the Q&A section, probably the most, I think we all do, of the interfaith panels. So to wrap up the question portion prepared, I will ask the panelists to answer what are 1 to 3 main things you want the City of San Jose employees specifically to know about your community in terms of priorities, concerns, or interests. And Rabbi Melanie, we will begin with you.
Thank you. So the first thing I would want city employees to understand is how small the Jewish community is. In the United States, we are just over 2% of the population, but you'll think, oh, there's so many Jews. People will often estimate, if I ask them, 10%, 20%. That's because most of the Jews in America live in major urban areas, and that makes Jews more visible in America. Worldwide, Jews are 1/10 of 1% of the population. And further, there were more Jews on the globe in 1939 than today. So that's because the Jewish community has not fully recouped from the loss of 6 million Jews, more than 1/3 of the Jews on earth during the period of the Holocaust, 1939 to 1945. So I think this is important to understand so that when Jews have a certain anxiety about Jewish survival, and this can emerge at unexpected moments, it is easier to understand. I think these small numbers also contribute to the concerns about anti-Semitism, which have been heightened in recent years because of the attacks in Pittsburgh and Poway, and also the rhetoric and the conspiracy theories that we hear from white nationalists and other extremist groups. A second important thing to know about American Jews is that we came from 4 layers of immigrants, 4 waves of immigration. The first were refugees from Spain and Portugal who came here through Brazil. So that Sephardic background is unknown to many American Jews. The first Jews who came were Latinx in 1654. The second wave were German Jews who fled after the failed Democratic Revolution of 1848. They were peddlers, they spread out all over America, and those were the first Jews in San Jose. The third wave was the largest, 1880 to World War I, and those are my grandparents and great-grandparents and many American Jews' family. It's a time that we can relate to now because it was a time of intense anti-immigrant feeling, especially after World War I. And many of the things that we hear today are things that were said in those years about the Jewish community, about the Irish, about the Italians. It led to a closing of the gates of the United States in the 1920s. The last waves are really 3 tiny little wavelets. A few survivors of the Holocaust were allowed into the United States after the war. No one was allowed, or very few were allowed in during the war. There were also refugees from the Soviet Union who were allowed to come to the United States during the Cold War. And there are Jews from Persia after the revolution in Iran, and some Israelis who come here for high tech. What's interesting is these last waves were people of color against the stereotype in America that every American Jew is white. American Jews, even if they're 3rd or 4th or 5th generation, identify heavily as immigrants, and they see America's treatment of immigrants as a key to Jewish life. That's why Jews have gotten together to oppose the Muslim ban, for example, and to work on sanctuary. This brings me to the last thing, and I'll be very brief. Jews on the whole tend to vote in politically progressive ways. In 2018, 85% of Jews voted for Democratic candidates. That was consistent with their support for the candidate Clinton and for President Obama. There are exceptions to this. Jews from the Soviet Union behave like Cubans. They're very suspicious of the left wing. But in general, I believe that understanding some of these demographic factors about the Jewish community can help you understand American Jews. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Melanie. Next, we'll hear from Amina, please.
All right, so in terms of some of the issues that are important to keep in mind, I would say, as an American Muslim myself, born and raised here, lived here all my entire life, the most important thing to keep in mind is that Muslims are human beings like anyone else. We're American. Muslims have been here since the very beginning of the founding of this country. Some, according to some research, as explorers, according to other documentation, as a significant percentage of enslaved Africans. And so the perception that Muslims are somehow the other, the foreigner, the security threat, undermines that narrative and history that Muslims are Americans. And a lot of the time, Muslims are otherized or demonized based on misperceptions about Islam or about, their role in this country or the role in the world. And one of the things that often lends itself to that perception is the view that all Muslims are the same. They're all Arab, they're all, South Asian. Maybe if you live in the Silicon Valley, you come to believe that. In reality, they are extremely diverse based on a number of factors. Number one, there's over 1.6 billion Muslims who live in some 50 plus nations. And so Muslims that you meet here in the Silicon Valley are going to represent all of those nations. And that carries with it diverse languages, diverse ethnicities, diverse cultures, even diverse religious practices. One of the common misperceptions is that Muslims are mainly Arabs, and in fact, that is not accurate. Only about 15% of Muslims are Arabs. The largest concentration worldwide is in South Asia, and in fact, India, where Muslims are a minority religion, is on track to be the largest location of Muslims right now. It's Indonesia. And so some of the assumptions that we make about Muslims are not based on data or statistics. Muslims, like any other religious group, have varying degrees of observance. So one can't assume just because someone's Muslim, just because their name is Muhammad, or even based on how they look, that they pray 5 times a day, for instance, or even that they fast Ramadan. It's important to kind of understand that, like any religious group, there are going to be those who practice a lot, those who practice a little, those who are just Muslim in name. Muslims also are highly educated, especially here in the Silicon Valley. Not surprisingly, you're going to find a large number of people in tech, including a lot of founders of their own companies, business owners. And so many Muslims or their parents or grandparents came here for education, are highly educated, their children and grandchildren are highly educated, and that is kind of a distinctive aspect of the community in the United States that many people overlook. One of the issues that often otherizes Muslims, in addition to some of the security issues, is their appearance. They come in all colors, in all races, but one of the kind of markers for Muslims, if they observe this, is the distinctive dress that you see me and Rahima wearing. So some Muslim women choose to wear what is called a hijab, or the headscarf, which is also accompanying modest dress. And that is, for different people, a conveyor of different things. It is primarily a religious practice that people observe due to their understanding of modesty in the faith. But for some Muslim women, it is based on a cultural practice or a family practice or a political statement. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are somehow more observant or more Muslims than someone that doesn't. It's just one aspect that is very visible. Muslim men also observe concept of modesty. You will encounter Muslim men who wear a beard, or who wear a skull cap, or who may wear even traditional clothing, as in South Asians may wear what is called a shalwar khamis, although generally not at work, but they may be, in their home or around town wearing that. And this is for anyone from South Asia. Less common Arab men may wear what is called a jalaba, a long gown, and what looks almost like a headscarf. And so there is this traditional dress for men that is very modest as well, that is something that they may wear in the mosque or at home or walking around town. Another thing to keep in mind is that Muslims, like many traditional cultures, are very family oriented. They often live with or near extended family in the same neighborhood or the same town. Muslims love social events. They love socializing. They love food. Anytime you might go to their house, they're going to invite you in for tea and snacks, and you're not going to be able to leave without eating something. On their holiday celebrations, which are two major celebrations, one at the end of Ramadan and another during the time of the Hajj, there will be large gatherings. Of course, again, with COVID, that has not been happening, but for many, many years, as long as I can remember, they will gather at the Santa Clara Fairgrounds, Santa Clara Fairgrounds or San Jose Fairgrounds, the one off of Tully Road, and have what looks like a carnival and food and just all sorts of activities for children. And so a lot of the social events will be outside because of our good weather. Today is actually, tonight is the beginning of the Muslim New Year, which is observed by some Muslims, especially among Shia Muslims, will be the 10th of that month. And so these are marked by gatherings and by food and by hospitality. And then lastly, for Muslims, the day of worship is Friday, and this can take place at any of the mosques that are around the Bay Area. Again, I'm not totally sure about how this works in my county. Some of the counties are allowing for prayers. I think most of them are not. So some people are just not praying at all. Some people are praying in the parks, but generally speaking, Friday is marked at, instead of the noon prayer, people go to the mosque, listen to a sermon, and then pray in congregation, and then go back to work. So Muslims will, have a regular work day. On Friday, they will just need to take about an hour and a half for that special Friday prayer. And, when Muslims say, thank God it's Friday, we really mean, thank God it's Friday. So that's just a little bit more about the community. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amina. Lakshmi, if we could please hear from you next.
Sure. I'd like to highlight three areas that would be of interest to the Hindu community. First off, to understand that Hinduism is a complex religion with many layers of understanding, of interpretation. In order to make sense of something, we often categorize it or put it in a box that's easily understandable by everybody. And some labels that Hinduism has been categorized by is yoga, namaste, Ayurveda, and the idea of multiple gods. Yes, these are concepts within the tradition, but the religious system cannot be reduced to these ideas. So I think one way to get a more authentic understanding is by talking to people who practice the faith. Some people might be more vocal about their practices. Others might want to, not feel comfortable sharing. But if we can create an environment where everyone feels welcome, everyone feels comfortable sharing about the unique ways they practice their tradition, that would be wonderful. And even to talk not only with our colleagues and friends, but to ask them how their parents or grandparents practiced the faith tradition. So this would help us appreciate the nuances, and it'll give us an intergenerational perspective than simply having a surface level viewpoint of how the tradition might be practiced today. The other couple of areas that we have in fact already discussed is one, to recognize Diwali and other Hindu festivals on a citywide level. So when the city recognizes these festivals as special days, it creates more awareness amongst all residents and not just Hindus. And that recognition makes Hindus feel more welcome, more appreciated, and it leads to greater understanding and appreciation of the tradition as a whole. And it celebrates our religious diversity as an entire community. The other aspect is, of course, dietary needs. Hindus don't eat beef, as we know, and many Hindus are also vegetarian or vegan. And so being mindful of that at meetings, in public schools, for example, would be incredibly helpful to the entire Hindu community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. We will hear from Venerable Tenzin next, please.
Thank you. So as some of my colleagues have mentioned, the diversity in the different faith traditions, and of course in Buddhism, it's similar. And people who consider themselves Buddhist range all the way from people who might do a very secular kind of mindfulness practice to people who have deep, traditional roots, come from Buddhist countries, immigrants and descendants of immigrants from traditionally Asian Buddhist countries. And that's what I wanted to talk about just for a minute, because I found, as is true with all immigrant communities, there can be a big priority in preserving the culture. And I found in different Buddhist communities, especially in the Bay Area, the temples serve as kind of the hub for not only religious observance, but cultural preservation as well. And so this is something to be important to just be aware of, because not all the things that you'll see happening in a temple are specifically a Buddhist practice. So understand that there are, cultural elements. For example, for so many communities, it's really important to preserve language and other cultures. There's a big Vietnamese Buddhist temple in San Jose, and I was there one time for an event and was being shown around by one of the monastics there, and she was showing me the classrooms where, in addition to Buddhist Sunday school, they have Vietnamese language classes for the kids and, different cultural things. So being aware of that and really respectful of that, because Buddhists are such a minority religion that often the temples serve as a cultural hub as well. One of the things that I find quite interesting in a lot of interfaith space is people are trying to be welcoming of diversity in terms of religions. But as I mentioned before, Buddhists don't have an idea of a creator God. And so in our wish to be harmonious, we shouldn't draw false equivalences. Sometimes I'll be in space and people will say, oh, the supreme being in whatever way we think of him. And I'm kind of going, okay, but we really kind of don't in Buddhism. And so I think it's important to acknowledge difference. Of course, there's a lot of overlap in terms of ethical frameworks and so forth, but not to just do this thing of saying, oh, we're all the same, we're just using different language, because there really are significant differences, and to be really aware and respectful of that as well. And, learn, ask questions. I think all of us are very open to answering questions about our faith traditions, especially for the ones that aren't as well known in our culture. So those are some of the things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable Tenzin. To wrap up our main question portion, we will have Katie. And to remind everyone, the question is, what are 1 to 3 main things you wish city employees to know about your community in terms of priorities, concerns, and interests? Take it away, Katie.
So Christianity is the largest faith in America, about 65%, sometimes as much as 85%, depending on how you measure, say there's some kind of Christian. And so the variety of Christian faith gets lost in those big, big percentages. If someone is Christian, they may want a Christian prayer group or fellowship group at work. They may want a group of people with whom they can sit at lunch and pray, or on their breaks, or after work. They maybe want to have a discussion group or a Bible study group. And then other people, you wouldn't know they were Christian until they came out in their obituary. It's just not going to happen. So be sensitive to individual preference and individual expression. Second, there is, because some of the loudest Christians are extremely politicized and very conservative. Those of us who are neither loud nor conservative get drowned out. And I can't tell you the number of people I get, you Christians say, you Christians do. I'm like, I don't do that, trust me. I don't know anybody that does that, trust me, except for my cousins. All my cousins in Tennessee act like that. But there is, the variety means a different level of expression and practice. And just because someone is up there at the microphone saying wearing a mask is a sign of the devil doesn't mean they represent all Christians. They probably represent themselves much more than a larger group. So an individual who's mouthing off is not representative, and, you know, give people a little slack on the extraordinary variety of belief and practice and political expression and willing to be expressed. I mean, my particular group is called God's Frozen Chosen because we don't talk. You know, we say, follow what we do, we're not going to talk about it, you know. But that means that I get a lot of, well, you Christians attitude. And, you know, for me, most of those statements are not true. And then third, in terms of benefits, some companies, some government organizations offer wonderful benefits like donation matching and time off to be volunteers. And for Christians for whom donations and volunteering are a fundamental practice for most of us, and you know, a very large percentage of our income and time is spent volunteering and reaching out to the marginalized. Having those matching and practices and or opportunities as a benefit. You know, those of you who manage benefits might want to think, if you want to attract people of faith, consider matching donations, consider matching the time. So like my husband is doing all the video ministry for our church since the lockdown, and we maxed out our matching in May because the company was matching for volunteer time. And we were able to do our whole donation for the year to that church in May, and then we could use the rest of the money that we would normally have given to the church, and we could give it to someone else because we were able to match. So matching volunteer time, allowing volunteer time, and matching donations may be something that you consider as a benefit that people might, you know, look at as very attractive, as even more important than, say, your title or your pay. So something to consider about how religion is a part of how people work.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie, so much. And that brings us perfectly to our Q&A. And to respect everyone's privacy, we will be pausing the recording now. Okay, wonderful. Thank you again to panelists and to our audience. This was an hour and a half on Zoom. I know Zoom can exhaust everyone. And to our host, City of San Jose, for hosting us today, this morning. As we draw the panel to a close, I will ask each speaker to offer a brief prayer for the firefighters working to contain the fires in the Bay Area Hills and all those suffering from the COVID pandemic. Rabbi Melanie, if you could please start us off.
Moses spoke the shortest prayer in the Bible when his sister Miriam was ill. He said, El na rafana la, oh God, please bring healing. We ask for a healing of body and spirit, a healing for individuals, and a healing for our society. Say amen.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Melanie. Venerable Tenzin, if you could please go next.
And so in Buddhist practice, at the end of any practice, we dedicate the merit, is the language we use. And so we just consider all the positive energy that we've generated collectively in this hour and a half, exploring this topic, learning more about how to create more harmonious social structures and communities, and just try and send all that positive energy to the people fighting the fire, to the people sick with COVID, to the people who are their caretakers, and just try to dedicate that positive energy towards those people working so hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Tenzin. Katie, if you could please go next.
So I do want to pray for the firefighters and first responders, but I also want to pray for all of us on Zoom. O God, who caused all space to be and created all things, be present with us in these new spaces we use for distance learning. Bless and empower us as we use new technologies and devices for online learning. Give us patience in the process and with the technology as we seek to learn, grow, and expand our minds and perspectives of this world that you love so much. In the name of the one who is present even when we are distant. Amen.
Thank you, Katie. Lakshmi, can you please go next?
Sure. There's a Sanskrit prayer that I'd like to chant. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings experience prosperity. And may none in this world suffer. Om, peace, peace, peace.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. Amina, if you can please conclude our prayers.
Dear God, please help us here in the Bay Area, in the United States and in the world to meet the challenge of this pandemic that has taken far too many lives. Help our first responders, help our doctors, help our nurses, help our firefighters now as a new challenge arises here in the Bay Area and California and the West. Help us to tackle the greater challenge of climate change that is an existential threat to all of us and in our lives. Help us to rise to all these challenges and to see a blessed ending to this most challenging year. Amen.
Thank you again to our audience and to our panelists and to our hosts. Now, as just we conclude, if I can please have one request to everyone attending. I have just put a link to a post-event evaluation. If you could please take just a couple minutes of your time to fill it out. It really, really does help us improve all of our panels. This panel and the quality of it is the result of many, many surveys before this. So if you can just take a quick moment, and either Zoma or Sabrina will follow up with you guys as well with the link if you're not able to get it now. So thank you so much, everyone, for your attendance, and hopefully you are safe and healthy going forward. Thank you.